this episode of Best Friends at Work, we explore what it really means to lead with joy and why it's not just rainbows and unicorns. Lori Pine, the Joy CEO, shows us how it fuels confidence, resilience, and success, and not just for individuals, but for teams and organizations as well. Listen to this moment where Lori shares the turning point that set her on this very important mission.
It really is part of my personality. I have been joyful. If my mom were still alive, she would tell you that I was just kind of that little girl. But I found that oftentimes that could really get squashed in the corporate world. In fact, there is a story that I've recently written about on my blog about a former VP who was very frustrated with me one day in my positive approach. Now, positivity is my number one Gallup strength finder, strength. So I am constantly looking for ways to solve a problem, to get to a solution, to not stay stuck in the swamp, if you will. And I was having this exchange with a boss, a vice president of mine at the time, and he was so frustrated with me. He found that I was very Pollyanna, and his response was, "Jesus, Lori, enough with the rainbows and unicorns. We just need to get to some practicality." Mm-hmm. And I really thought I was very practical. I thought what I was serving up was very solutions oriented. But for him, it did not come across that way. And so, you have a decision to make. Like, do you squash your fire? Or do you find a place that will really love and respect who you are? And so that was really a sign for me that I wasn't in a company that I needed to be in. It was time for me to go. And so I say that to you, that when I had left my corporate life, kind of closed that door, said, I'm really not going back to a corporate job. I'm ready to pivot and do something different for many reasons. I knew that there were women sitting in cubicles and corner offices grappling with this idea of, how do I really harness this business sense that I have, this ability to solve complex problems, this ability to change how business is done, how we get things done, how we improve a bottom line, but also be me. And I'm my best me when I infuse some joy. And there's science behind that. There's statistics behind that. And so I really came up with this idea of, what if we could teach more women to bring joy into their leadership? Couldn't that change things? And so that's just kind of where it's taken me.
That moment became the catalyst for Lori's work, helping leaders embrace joy as a serious strategy for success. To hear the full conversation, join us in this inspiring episode of Best Friends at Work. I'm Lorin Mask. Please join me and my best friends at work, Naomi Lippin and Mel Boyd Brown, where we invite experts to talk about work, life, and leadership, and how to do them better. Hey, everybody.
Hello, how are you?
I'm all right. Happy Friday, or Friday.
Friday this week. Yay.
It is Friday. Before we let Lori in, our wonderful, amazing guest, I have a little story I wanted to share. I was wondering if you guys were open to hearing. I think you'll love the story because it's right in all of our wheelhouses.
Well, with that intro,
how can we say no?
No.
Well, I mean, you could just say no.
No,
I'm completely
Lorin.
shut down. No, Lorin, I don't want to hear.
Get out of here, Lorin. Yeah. So last night was my son's swim banquet, Well, my son and my daughter, because Carrington's the swim manager. I think
I
I've
did
told you
not know
guys
that.
before.
I
Yeah,
didn't
yeah,
either.
she was
Mm-mm.
the manager for the last couple of years. Um, and it was a lesson in leadership last night, and I loved every minute. This coach is by far my favorite coach at our school. One of the favorites that I've had the honor to, because we have some good coaches that my kids don't do that sport. But his name is Coach Frank, and he uh, he did something he does this all the time. Instead of just like talking about the one great swimmer or one great diver, because we have a couple of them that are just outstanding, he takes the time at these banquets as he talks about all of the swimmers to really highlight what they're good at, right? Instead
Mhm.
of just here we have so and so who's a state, finalist and yada yada blah blah blah, right? He goes through from seventh grade to seniors to talk about, what they're bringing to the swim team and their value of the team, and he talks about even adding more swimmers because more swimmers make us better, and how we work together to make each other better. And he values even the swimmers that aren't the fastest. He does everything in his power to make sure they're part of the meets, that they get opportunities to place and score. And he's very strategic about that, and he's added on a couple other coaches and they work together. And I was just, my daughter, who did soccer, and she says, bruh, like my banquets are never like this. This is an amazing banquet. We had food and
Mhm.
all the parents, and,
Mhm.
he does the letter awards for the new swimmers. And I just was like, I was like, this is something he does naturally. And,
Mhm.
and it's definitely a lesson in leadership. And I just was like, I need to share this with Mel and Naomi. We're recording tomorrow.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I was just, I wasn't like the typical parent going, oh, we love Coach Frank. It was more like I'm studying, going, yes, that's right. Ooh, that's good. Oh, and he had little plaques for all the seniors to give them with their highlights and what they brought to the team. And not every senior's the best swimmer, but he made sure that they all felt important, valued, and special. And guess who's watching? The seventh, eighth graders, the freshmen, they watch that and they witness that. And I just hope they're learning more than just swim.
Hmm.
So,
What I like
Mhm.
about that story that you shared is that it really speaks to the impact that leaders have when they create community and that sense of belonging that we all want to have to something. Because not
Mhm.
everybody's going to be first in a race. Like in a swimming race, there's like one, okay, sometimes it's high, right? But like, um, and yet, so
Mhm.
how do you make everyone feel like they belong?
And right, and everyone brings something, whether
Right.
you win or don't. It's it's a team, and so everyone brings something to the team, and that's the thing. And so my hope, Lauren, and I'm hearing that he did this, is that he didn't just make stuff up, right?
no.
So he
Yeah.
was, so he paid attention to each
Hmm.
individual and was able to call out something special that they contributed. And that's to me a trait of a really great leader. Because it's one thing to say, oh, everyone gets a medal,
Right. And
right?
that's not what this was
Right. Yeah.
about.
No,
Right. Right. It wasn't a
that's not
participation award.
right,
Right.
right?
And
Yeah, so to be
yeah.
seen, right? It's so important to be seen. And I think, Lauren, you don't have to be concerned at all about whether the children who participate will remember,
Mhm.
because I remember my second grade teacher
Yeah.
who, and that was many years ago, but she was really special and we developed a very special relationship. She
Mhm.
still stands out in my mind.
I love
So,
that. I love
You know
yeah.
that.
love
Yeah.
about Naomi is like the call out because I think sometimes people confuse, they do think that it's participation. They do think like, well, I don't want to, like, I'm not giving everybody a medal, but that's missing the point. That's not
Hmm.
what
It is.
it's about being seen and
And it's about being
appreciated.
specific,
Right.
right? It's not just, hey, you were great, here's a medal.
Right.
Like it was, you were great because this specific thing. And it wasn't always about swimming. You know, he honored the whole part
Mm-hmm.
of the person and what they brought,
Mm-hmm.
you know, to the team.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway,
Mm-hmm.
I loved it.
All
But yeah,
right.
it's specific. It's not a generic. It wasn't, none of them were
Mm-hmm.
generic, right? And I thought that that
Mm-hmm.
was great. So wanted to share. That was my
Yeah,
evening
very
last
cool.
night. Proud mama moment, but at the same time, just proud leadership development observer moment.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
There's
And
examples
encouraging,
where
right?
people,
It's also encouraging to me to know that there are people like that in the school system.
Mhm.
I think there's a lot of people like that in the school
Yeah, I
system.
know another soccer coach
Okay.
in the
You
that
look
does
more
that
optimistic than
with the
me. I'm
younger
sorry.
kids, with
Well,
the seventh
I'm in
graders.
Canada. So.
What did you say, Mel?
I
Naomi
said,
missed it.
well, I said I'm in Canada too, so I don't know if that changes.
Oh, I don't know. Anyway,
Who knows?
let's bring Lori Pine
Let's
in.
Yes,
bring
let's
Lori
have
Pine in.
Gloria.
Enough about my stories, right? So I'm so excited to have her. I mean, Naomi, God, where did you find her? It was some online event, right, Naomi, that we then ended up going and
Yes.
meeting
Yes.
her, and
Hmm.
she had a really great story, and so we've continued to stay and be friends with her. Mel, I know you've heard us talk about her before, so
I'm really excited to meet her because I feel like I kind of know her already.
so let me do the official bio so that we have that, and then we will let her in. So Lori Pine is a former corporate vice president who's worked with global powerhouse brands Coca-Cola, Campbell's, and Anheuser-Busch. And aside, I think Campbell's used to be one of those best places to work too. There's like a book one of the CEOs wrote once. I wonder if she was there at the same time. I don't remember when that was. I'll ask her some other time. Anyway, she would, okay, at these places, she also led and grew near $1 billion in business. Big number. Now she's an executive leadership coach, and she helps ambitious, high-powered women who are at the intersection of their career growth and personal fulfillment. She empowers them to quiet self-doubt and find their natural confidence and strike their sweet spot and managing their high-powered careers while living their best personal lives. With a passion for helping women up level while finding freedom and fulfillment, Lori is on a mission to leave a legacy of success and joy, focusing on the ripple effect that touches everyone in their orbit. And just when you think you can't have it all, Lori helps you achieve things that matter. A popular speaker and also a podcast guest, tongue getting tripped up there. Lori gives actionable takeaways while inspiring audiences to think about joy in a whole new light. And she does call herself the Joy CEO. And I know that we'll have a lot of questions about that. So, shall we bring
Bring
her
her
Yes.
in.
on in?
Yes,
Okay, drum
please.
roll. Here we go. Brrr. It's Friday. I'm feeling punchy. Oh boy, oh boy. Hey, Lori. Oh,
Oh,
she was there. There she is.
Well, hello.
hi,
Welcome,
Oh, can you
Lori.
hear me?
welcome.
Can.
Yes.
You can hear me? I can't hear you.
We can hear you.
Okay, hold on one second. Let me figure out why I can't hear you.
You can take your time. I'm a master editor, getting to be.
There we go. I think I got you.
Can you hear us now?
Yes.
Yes. Hi, Lori.
Yes.
Welcome.
Hi,
Hello. Thank
Welcome.
you so
Lori.
much. Thank you for having me.
We are
Lovely to meet
Yes.
you. Because I'm the only
so
person who hasn't met you, but I feel like I know you already.
I love that. I love that. Yes, we are in such good company.
Me-
Lori, you're not in your usual spot.
No, it's spring break and there's a lot of busyness going on in my house. So I relocated to a more private space where hopefully we will not be interrupted.
Mm.
By kids or
Yeah.
dogs or cats or pets, right?
Any of the above,
Any of
husbands,
them could happen,
yes.
right? That's always great. That's always good. So, well, we've just done your intro and done your bio, talked about how fabulous you are, and we are really excited to have you. And so we're going to let Naomi kick us off because we've given her the job at first question of the day.
Yay, Naomi.
Yay. It's so nice to see you again.
You too,
And
my
you have
friend.
been very busy with some
Yes.
wonderful, wonderful um, retreats and connections and doing some great things. So it's really great to see all of that blossoming. Um, so the first thing that we kind of wanted to ask you, Lori, because you've kind of, I don't really mean this in a small way. I mean this in its most profound way, that you have branded yourself as a joy, some embodying joy and bringing that to the work that you do. And so we're kind of wondering, how'd you come to that? Out of the whole spectrum of ways that you could or that you might want to show up in the world, why joy?
It's such a good question. And it really was much more simple how I came to it than one might think. It really is part of my personality. I have been joyful. If my mom were still alive, she would tell you that I was just kind of that little girl.
Mm,
But I found that oftentimes that could really get squashed in the corporate world.
mm,
In fact, there
mm,
is a story that I've recently written about on my blog about a former
mhm,
VP who was very frustrated with me one day in my positive approach. Now, positivity is my number one Gallup strength finder strength. So I am constantly looking for ways to solve a problem, to get to a solution, to not stay stuck in the swamp, if you will. And I was having this exchange with a boss, a vice president of mine at the time, and he was so frustrated with me. He found that I was very Pollyanna, and his response was, Jesus, Lori, enough with the rainbows and unicorns. We just need to get to some practicality.
mhm,
And I really thought I was very practical. I thought what I was serving up was
mhm,
very solutions oriented.
mhm,
But for
mhm,
him, it
Mm.
it did not come across that way. And so, you have a decision to make. Like, do you squash your fire or do you find a place that will really love and respect
mhm,
who you
mhm.
are? And so
Yeah.
that was really a sign for me that I wasn't in a company that I needed to be in. It was time for me to
Mhm,
go. Um, and so I say that to you that when I was had left my corporate life, kind of closed that door, said, I'm really not going back to a corporate job. I'm ready to pivot and do something different for many reasons. I knew that there were women sitting in cubicles and corner offices grappling with this idea of how do I really harness this business sense that I have, this ability to solve complex problems, this ability to change how business is done, how we get things done, how we improve a bottom line, but also be me.
Mm.
And I'm my best
mhm,
me when I infuse some joy. And there's science behind that, there's statistics behind that. And so I really came up with this idea of what if we could teach more women to bring joy into their leadership? Couldn't that change things? And so that's just
Mhm.
kind of where it's taken me.
I love that.
mhm,
So I
mhm,
remember, Naomi, I don't know if you remember this. Naomi and I, as all of you know, we worked together, but for our listeners, we had worked together. But Naomi had to interview me for my job, to be part of their team. And I remember her telling me later that she was really pleased with one of my questions. And Naomi, do you remember what that question was? Oh, it's okay. I asked everybody what brings you joy. I
mhm,
remember Naomi's answer. for sure. It was her daughter, and I that made my heart sing because then I thought, yeah, I could work on this team. You know, all of them had great answers, obviously, but I was quite excited that Naomi brought her motherhood, into this interview, for a job. And I thought, wow, that's great because that's a safe space for me to do the same. But I love joy, and I love the idea that you bring in that thought around authenticity.
hmm
Thank
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
comes
And I'm sorry, I just wanted to just say
Yeah.
one thing about when I listen to you, I feel that energy,
you. Oh,
right? It's
Mm,
like you embody that energy of joy, which may look a little bit different for everyone.
mhm.
And I really feel that in how you show up. So there
Oh,
it is.
thank you, Naomi.
Yeah.
I want to, because I don't know you, Lori, I spent some time researching you and looking on the website.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I was really drawn to, and I'd love to explore it with you a little bit more in terms of joy, is like how deeply it's connected to our values, right? And living in our values in our work. And I think how often, if you ask people about their values, people typically give you like a quick answer,
Mhm.
but they haven't often thought deeply about it, or they haven't really thought about their values in their everyday life, like how they make decisions and the choices that they make. And maybe this is also a group discussion, but so how do we help other people notice their values and lean into them as a way of getting to joy?
Yeah, that's again such a great question because I think we go through life so busy all the time. We are in a culture of hyper vigilance on busy, and we only think about values in terms of how we were raised.
Mm,
Like those are my values, how I was raised, how my parents raised me, kind of that context of childhood. And honestly, it wasn't until I got into my coaching certification that I really started to do the deep values work because it's part
Mm.
of, that
Mhm.
framework.
Mm-hmm.
And now when I take people through values, when somebody's stuck on something in their work or they're having a problem
Mhm.
with a coworker or manager, and I'll say, let's do this quick exercise. And they say, oh, that's the value that's being triggered. And it's like this aha moment.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so the more you become adept at being able to identify that, I see the value that's being triggered, the more you can identify it and then work through it, right? Because it's action that's going to get us unstuck, awareness, action that gets us unstuck. And once we can do that, then we can get back to being who we want to be, as opposed to in fear, in flight, or frozen, any of those. And so I've done quite a bit of work on trying to define what joy is, research, looking at the definitions, Greek, Latin, fusing them, biblical terms. And I've really just come up with this term that joy is a profound and holistic sense of well-being, and it transcends momentary happiness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if we get to that idea of this profound and holistic sense of well-being, okay, then I can breathe a little deeper. I can speak a little softer. My shoulders can roll back a little more relaxed. And it's not the pressure of some sort of glorified Instagram joy.
mhm,
It's not a party. It's not a
Yeah.
$20,000 vacation.
mhm.
It's much more internal. And it reminds me that I can access it at any time if I just so choose.
What I really love
Mhm.
about that definition is, and I'm curious what your reaction to it is as I hear it, it gives space for disappointment. Like
Yes.
it's not just about, like, to
No,
your point, it's not Pollyanna,
no, no,
it gives space for disappointment, it gives space for grief, it gives
all
space
of
for
it,
frustration and anger, all of those things.
all of it. And this idea that polarities can exist.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mhm,
can have joy and grief simultaneously. For a
mhm,
long time I didn't know that. so I just wanted to stuff all these big feelings I had. I just like, please don't let me have feelings today. Let me just get through the day with no
Mm-hmm.
feelings.
Mm-hmm.
But the truth is that once I understood that I could have these big feelings and they could be in opposition with each other, and that could still be okay, well, then my acceptance around it, my ability to function with it, all became much more manageable. And I
Mhm.
really learned that through the loss of my mom. I lost her 13 years ago. It was sudden, 5 weeks, and it's so yeah. So then there was this horrific grief, but then there were these beautiful memories, and
Mhm.
there was this deep sadness. But then people would reach out and they would tell me these wonderful stories, and so there was just this constant bipolar effect, if you will, of what was
Mm-hmm.
happening during that time. And
Mhm.
so that loss, as painful as it was, really trained me that even on our darkest days, there's rays of light that come through. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm.
I love the
Mhm.
idea about that kind of the fact that it's more about a constant, right? I saw this great cartoon, like not cartoon as in like, but a single pane thing, and it two people sitting on a bench, and someone says, "Why is it so hard to find happiness?" And the other person says, "That's because you're looking for it in the future."
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I often say
Mhm.
to my kids that we can only know joy if we also know disappointment. We can only know happiness if we like those feelings exist because we can contrast them.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
True. It's true.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm kind of
Mhm.
curious, Lori, at the beginning, you mentioned a lot of statistics,
yeah.
around joy. And I know you work with a lot of leaders, and you also implemented a lot of what you do now at your previous life.
Yes, yes, I
So,
did.
so I'm kind of curious, how do you, or how have you learned to measure joy with with yourself, with people, with teams, with organizations, with leaders?
So it's so interesting. I think because I was naturally joyful, I didn't know that other people had varying degrees of it. I just kind of went through life with this naivete, if you will. I grew up in a one traffic light town in Maine, and so having growing up in such a rural area with humble beginnings, I think that I just saw the world a little bit differently when I came into the world and went into a big city and went into a big company and just made my way through with just kind of this lens of not knowing, and that was okay. And it's funny, I went to Rutgers University last night and I just spoke about this. And so many of the kids came up to me, the students came up to me afterwards, and they were like, I grew up in a small town too. And sometimes I feel like a fish out of water. And I'm like, you just keep being you. You just be authentic and you be you, and you're going to be fine. So,
All I'm picturing when you tell that story is remember Mary Tyler Moore, and she throws the hat up in the air. She's
Yeah.
like, and the big
So we've now
like,
dated ourselves for everyone listening. But
exactly.
yes.
well, I'm sorry, but that's all I can picture when Lori's like, I'm in the big city now.
I pretty
Reminding me of
much, I
Mary
mean,
Tyler Moore.
one traffic light town to holy smokes, they're putting me on an airplane and they're putting me up at the Four Seasons Hotel. Who am I?
I'm small
Right?
town Texas, right into New York City.
Yeah,
Holy cow,
yes,
right? Yeah,
yes.
yeah, yeah.
So I didn't know to measure joy. I just knew my own barometer, and I knew that life had some highs and lows, and I certainly went through some lows, and I certainly went through some highs too. But I knew that the leaders that I was drawn to were the leaders who were authentic and also positive. They saw the good in you, but they also had the courage to tell you the truth. They were giving you feedback. It was constructive. It had a point and a purpose, and you could actually do something with it. I didn't appreciate leaders who didn't tell me the truth or neglected to give feedback or gave me feedback that was vague and felt like I couldn't sink my teeth into it and actually take action on it. So I kept seeking out mentors and leaders who I felt like were like-minded. And that worked well in my career. I really never applied for a job. I just would find job and find a mentor, and then they'd tell me that something was open. And that's kind of how my whole career really worked. Was built on relationships and hard work, and you show up and you do what you say you'll do. And
Mhm.
um, but since I've been out here in the world of entrepreneurship, I felt like I needed some science behind it. Like, was all this just my perspective, or are there researchers who are researching this? Well, lo and behold, there are lots of researchers, and there's lots of data, and some of the data is really staggering. And I was like, whoa, holy
Right.
smokes, like we're onto something here. Um, and the data shows that joyful leaders are 31% more productive.
Mm.
Makes sense. They're
Okay.
not getting caught up in the garbage. They're not getting
Yeah.
sucked into the stuff that is all the chit chat and the nonsense that doesn't matter. So they're able to just stay focused on, how do we lift people? How do we do the work? How do we produce good work? They're 3 times more creative, joyful leaders. So
Hmm.
they're looking for these creative solutions. So that was so annoying to my previous manager because it wasn't a straight line. Maybe it was out of the box thinking, but the idea of creativity really plays a big part in innovation
Mm-hmm.
and how companies can grow. And then joyous leaders are 40% more likely to get promoted. Now that one really had me do some digging, because I was like, okay, where's the science behind that? And it's really in this ability to, one, have these multiple emotions going on. Things can exist in their personal life and their professional life at the same time, and they can still show up and be focused.
Hmm.
Um, they can also still keep their eye on what's important, and they can weed out nonsense. So being able to prioritize and organize what are the priorities, because everything can't be a priority. Um, and they're also able to articulate and find an ally that they can trust that can then help them
Mm-hmm.
when they say, here's what I'm thinking about doing next in my career. And then somebody else knows.
They find a
So,
best friend.
yeah, a best friend at work. How about
There
that?
you go. Yeah.
How
Yeah.
about
Plug.
Yes, yes,
Hmm.
yes. And it's helpful to have a best friend at work who actually can advocate on your behalf, who
Mhm.
can sponsor you in a way, who can be in a room that you're not in and talk positively about you. And that's really what you want to be able to cultivate in the workplace.
Mhm.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah,
I'm
I
thinking a
think
lot. Oh,
go,
go
no,
ahead.
Mel, go.
I was going to say, I was just thinking as you were describing this, like the impact of joyful leaders, I was also thinking about for individuals who might feel like they've lost the joy in their lives. Um, is this like for me, there was this element of self-awareness that comes back to the values piece and then the relationship building, like what's important to me.
Yeah.
And we don't have to go there, but I was just holding in my head this idea of like, you know, how how to help other people access their joy or how we might access our joy.
Yes. It's
Mhm.
so easy to think about how we can help other people, but the truth is it has to start with us.
Yeah.
And I believe that once it starts with us, it becomes a ripple effect, just like the water makes a ripple. And then it touches everybody in our orbit.
Like the
In
emotional
some,
contagion.
Mm.
Yeah.
right,
Mhm.
exactly. In some sort of
Mhm.
way that will spark a curiosity that says, what's going on with her? What's different? You know,
Mhm.
and the more we can pour into ourselves in a way that improves us, makes us more aware, makes an investment in ourselves worthy, an ROI, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
I think people do take notice. And not and
Mhm.
to dispel the idea that that is selfish,
Mm.
because it's
That's a
not.
return on joy. It's an ROJ. You just come up
Yes,
in
it's,
your mind.
it's a return on joy.
ROJ.
We return
That's
on joy,
great, Mel.
ROJ.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh,
So
ROJ. I love that.
I that's brilliant, Mel. But, and so Lori, here's another question for you. Because as you're speaking, I agree. I mean, everything that you say is like, feels like it lifts spirit, which is wonderful. When you work with someone, how do you, what do how do you approach this?
Well, the truth is, Naomi, that when somebody comes to work with me, they're not full of joy. And they really don't want to talk about becoming full of joy. They want to talk about the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really what we diagnose first is what's the problem? And, you know, there's a range of problems out there, but I'll just give you one example. I've recently been coaching a woman who was in C-suite in banking, and it, she knew that the company wasn't meeting its financial goals, and she had a really large salary, so likely she was going to need to step aside, and she did. But she made a decision when she stepped aside that she wanted to pivot to an alternative industry. So she had been banking 25 years and she really wanted to go into like an ancillary field, fintech, something like that. But the more and more time went by, the more fear crept in.
Mm.
The more she kept telling herself stories. I'm too old. I'm outdated. I'm not relevant for a new industry. And yet she was getting feedback and proof from all the people that she was meeting with that none of that was true. And she was getting closer and closer and closer to a job. And what she needed from coaching was this assurance to stay the course. Stay the course. Now, then she got a job offer from another bank. She turned it down. She got a second job offer from a bank. She turned it down. And now she's like shaking in her boots. She's like, I've now turned down two job offers in order to keep this vision, this faith that I really want
Mm-hmm.
to pivot to this new
Mm-hmm.
industry.
Mm-hmm.
But all this head trap comes in and it's telling her, I can't do it. I'm all the things, right, that comes in. Long story short, it was 4.5 months later, and in 1 week, she had three offers from fintech companies. And she basically got to pick and choose and negotiate. And yes, so
Mm.
it's really how can we? And so then came the joy, right? So we walked through a swamp. She didn't believe. She wasn't sure how any of it was going to work out. But in that week, when those three job offers came, it verified her confidence. It verified her expertise. It verified all the 25 years of work she's done. And it also negated all the naysayers, right?
Mm.
All that talk, all that trash. And so, in accepting the job she accepted, there was so much joy because was being true to herself. Her
Mm-hmm.
well-being was intact the whole time, even though she was scared, even though she wasn't sure, even though her confidence wavered. Yeah.
It
Mm-hmm.
really speaks to that idea that when you gave that definition of joy at the beginning,
Yeah.
about it being holistic and profound and well-being,
Yeah.
that it's not like a quick sugar rush, right?
No, 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 not at all. In fact, it's more like the stabilizing
Like eat your carrots and everything.
yeah, it's more like the broccoli kale shake, you know? It's like yes. Yeah.
Interesting.
I'm curious, Lori, you've been doing this for a few years now, and I'm really curious about if your concept from the beginning of your journey around joy and, a few years later, what's the progression? Has there been any morphing or changing with it, or has it been kind of like, nope, it's been like a little bit around that? Like, what's the
No,
dynamic that's happened there?
there's been a lot of shifting and And I think a lot of it has been my own internal shifting. You know, I spent 25 years in big consumer products goods companies and
Mm,
wore the black suit and the crisp white shirt every day and was very
mm,
polished, very buttoned up. And, you know, when you come from that environment, there's a training, there's a conditioning, if you will, right? And so from there, I became a stay-at-home mom for a year and a half with my youngest son, who was 17 at the time during COVID. And so my whole life flipped upside down. I went from crisp, you know, white shirts and black suits to yoga pants and a ball cap. And so I really had this kind of identity crisis.
mhm.
And
Yeah.
so now I'm asking the universe for a sign and I'm getting this inspiration and we're going to talk about joy. And so I had my own self-doubt. I had my own, like, kind of like I just talked to you about my client, like, really? Is this what I'm going to do? I'm going to make this kind of a pivot. And so I had my own version of the head trash,
Mhm.
you know, that
Mm.
said, okay, I just ran $1 billion business and a large team, and now I'm going to show up on LinkedIn and talk about joy. And I was really concerned, like, oh my gosh, it's laughable. People are going to laugh me right off of LinkedIn and think I've lost my mind. So the work had to be an inside job first,
Yeah.
that I had to take myself seriously, that I had to know that this was profound and would monumentally change the way that women could show up in their careers in a way that would allow them more than just balance. It would allow them freedom to be
Mhm,
who they were meant to be.
mhm,
And
mhm,
so the more I did that work, the more I
mhm,
got rid of my own crap, if you will, my own
Mm.
head trash, the more it became clearer and clearer and clearer. So along those lines during that journey, it has certainly morphed. And there have been people that have come along the journey with me. You know, I've hired my own coaches, I've had some marketing help. Um, and at every stage of the journey, they've held my hand. I currently have a relatively new marketing coach, and she's from the UK, and she just gives me a butt whooping almost every time I meet with her British accent. Laurie, Laurie. So I appreciate her greatly. And yeah.
I love how you describe that. 'Cause I'm wondering, is that where the joy framework came from for you? Like that idea of thinking about, because I heard vision there as you were talking about like what it is that I want to do
Yeah.
and aligning with that, and then values. And is that where that came out of, that work? Because I thought it was a fascinating concept of this idea that we might approach it like that there's
Yeah.
just that we can think about approaching joy too, right?
Yeah, there's certainly part of it that came from there, but there's another part of it that came from a lived experience where I was a single mom for 7 years in a very big company, trying to keep my head above water every day. And I would show up at work trying to be joyful, trying to plaster a smile on my face. But in the meanwhile, life was really hard. You know,
Mm,
I was navigating trying to co-parent with an ex that was not very co-parentable. Um, I was raising two little boys who were so full of energy that I could not keep up with them. I I did it all
mm,
alone. I mean, my
mm,
ex-husband was mostly absent, and so
mm,
I was on 24/7. So, you know, I had to hire a nanny, and I didn't have any family here. And
mm,
so on the front, I was like constantly trying to paint the white picket fence and make sure everything looked beautiful, but like inside the ceiling's falling in and, you know,
mhm.
there's no flooring. So it's what it felt like.
Yeah.
So I think part of my inspiration was that I know that there are other women sitting in corporate roles going through something similar,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
they don't know who to talk to, and they don't know who to trust. And it's a very fine line between putting on a facade and your best foot forward that shows that you're capable and you're competent and you have what it takes to do the job, and a need to do the job, right? A financial need to do the job, a desire to do the job. But then you have all this background noise about what something that might really be going on in your life, whether it's a divorce, whether it's aging parents is a big thing right now, whether it's it could be anything in life.
Yeah.
And so I was really thinking about who's that woman right now sitting, whether she's in a cubicle or a corner office, doesn't matter, who just doesn't know where to turn or who to talk to.
Mm.
And how do we help her? How do we reach her?
I think that's so profound because I think sometimes when we're in the muck, we've all had our struggles and we never know what's going on with other people and we internalize it so much that, we tell ourselves stories like nobody wants to be burdened with my
Mm.
problems or, I've got this great paying job. Who am I to have problems? Right? Whatever it is. And I think that what's really key here, Lori, that I'm hearing is that I hate to use the word mistake, but maybe a lot of women especially are making the mistake that they have to figure it out by themselves,
Yeah.
Totally. I thought I did.
you
I
know?
didn't
Mm-hmm.
dare tell anybody
Mm-hmm.
what was really going on. And the few
Mm-hmm.
people I did tell, to this day, we just had a meetup, like a little Coca-Cola reunion, and they were like, "Dang, girl, you've come a long way."
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm.
yeah, you don't want
Yeah.
to tell people like what's really going on. Not people you work with, because really, what if you're judged? What if they think less of you? What if they tell your boss? Yeah.
Well, there's a
Yeah.
self-judgment piece that we all can do, and then there's that like fear of external judgment piece
Mhm.
too. And man, you put those two together and like
Mm-hmm.
that's like a knockout punch.
Yeah,
Yeah. And then you
Yeah.
stick
total.
yourself in an environment you shouldn't be in, and then you're shooting all over yourself, and then you're in imposter syndrome at the same time, and let's
Yeah.
layer cake it.
Yes.
So I'm going to just bring just another thought in this, and it's connected to this, and it's also connected to how I've heard you speak often, Lori, which is I think some of the antidote is community and
Yes.
feeling connected, right, to people, other women, or primarily for me, it would be other women, as I believe it is for you, who really can lift each other. It's a sense of collective lift or collective holding, right?
Mhm.
So that, you know, you don't feel so alone and you feel like, you can be vulnerable and you can get the support that you're entitled to, really, right?
Mm.
And so I know that you champion that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. Thank you, Naomi. That's how I met Naomi and Lauren, was
Yeah.
through an
Mm-hmm.
initiative I really undertook in my community to create a community of women who could come together. And I knew that there were women in our community who worked for companies, were working from home, were traveling, and didn't know how to connect with other like-minded women right here in their backyards. That was me for years. The only way I knew how to connect with that was at the little league field, with two
Mm.
boys. And so I really had this big desire to build a community of women who could come together with this idea that when the tide rises, all the ships rise.
Mm.
And we as women, I believe we're programmed with a superpower to do that. That we have the ability to collaborate, to connect, to lift one another up, that it takes a little bit of time, but it pays in dividends. I mean, not necessarily monetarily, but in what we can do for one another. When we can help somebody get promoted, when we can help somebody find a job, when we can offer somebody starting out in a new business an opportunity that really changes the trajectory of that business. Life changes. And that is a ripple effect that
Mm-hmm.
is manifested by a joy that cannot be explained. And people can change, communities can change, families can change based on that very principle that when the tide rises, all the ships rise. It doesn't mean that if the tide rises, I've got to knock 6 ships off because I want the whole tide for myself. No, no, no. That's not the type of world we want to live in and we want to create.
Mhm.
And so, yes, I think that that's part of the mission here is how do we bring more and more women together who are bright and ambitious and want good for the world and good for each other, and how do we help them? Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that. Um, I think that I'm going to speak for all of us that we could probably talk for another 16 hours.
Oh yeah.
But we're
Totally.
going to just do one last question so that that we can stick to our timeline for our listeners. What's if if there was one thing like right now that anyone who's listening, um, what's the one or I should maybe I'm thinking the first step. Like what's one thing that someone the minute they hit, end of the recording and they go, "Wow, like you're going to give them one directive, one action item or thing that they could do." What would it be?
You can choose joy right now. And
Mm,
probably the simplest way to do it is contrary thinking, meaning do the opposite of what you might be inclined to do. So, if you're inclined to just stay sitting at your desk for the next 4 hours and work straight through and don't take a break, do the opposite. Get up, go outside, get 5 minutes of fresh air, breathe in, stretch your arms, and then go back in and sit down. But by doing the opposite and interrupting what your normal patterns are, you have a moment to just invite joy into your consciousness. Do that. Do that. Interrupt the ordinary, interrupt the predictable by inviting joy to come to its surface. It's already in you. Take the
I
action.
love
Yeah.
interrupt
Love it.
interrupt
Beautiful.
ordinary.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I'm feeling like a second podcast is about interrupting the ordinary. Lori, thank you so much for being on with us today. We really have really enjoyed having you on.
Yeah.
We tell this to all our guests so far. We hope that you would love to come back again at some point
Of course.
and
I
be
mean,
a
you
part
girls
of
are
our
really my friends. So,
Oh, I'm a new friend.
yes, yes.
It's always good to have good friends and new friends and old friends. And I'm always I tell my just a quick like my teenagers, they're whenever they struggle with their friends. And I go, listen, I said, you're going to be making best friends throughout your whole life. I said, I'm always making new best friends and I'm in my 50s now. So
Yes,
it's okay.
exactly.
You'll always have good friends. Well, all right, ladies, have a wonderful rest of the day. And as always, thanks for being my best friends and having this great time together.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye, everybody.
Take good care, Lorin.
Thank you.
Wow, I could have kept talking for like hours with her.
Oh yeah, there were so many different places to go in that conversation. We have to have her back. There were so many questions I didn't ask, and ask her and ask you guys. But we should have her back.
Yeah.
I love what you said at the end, really. Interrupt the ordinary and invite joy in because it's already in you. Just invite it to show itself.
I feel like there is something
Yeah.
so much to like sit there and go, yeah, the beacon of light or somewhere. It's just buried. I mean, she said so many really great things, but yeah, that was a showstopper for me right there at the end. I was like, wow. Wow, that was really, really good. And I loved all her statistics too, because to me, I think that a lot of people who are listening, whether you're male or female, is really knowing that and we've all studied like the neuroscience and the whole idea like some of the stuff around David Rocket. It's like when you start to lighten up and your the people under you do as well, so I feel like there's something not only just valuable to bring to yourself, but how can you bring that to people around you.
Hmm. I feel
The
like it's
thing
really
that, go ahead, Mel.
I feel like that topic of like how might you like access joy in your life right now? It's never felt more important.
I will tell you that there's a lot, I read a lot about the way that, hmm, the way we resist authoritarianism is to be in touch with our joy, because
Yeah.
joy does not exist in in that, in that kind of social structure.
Mm-hmm.
And, if you even, we know that's true. If you read about what the Soviet Union was at one time, and then the countries that were under their umbrella, everything was gray. There was no joy, right?
Mm.
People were walking around in fear. And so that, so the idea of joy being really important, and not like, I really like, it's not just rainbows and unicorns. It's not
Right.
just this light, like bubbles in the air kind of thing. There's a real deep strength to being able to really embrace joy. Now, that it's going to, all three of us might experience it a little bit differently, and
Right.
it will show up differently. And it's for us to identify what it is for us, but that being in touch with that is what's really important.
I
Well,
also think I want to add to that because you're making me think, Naomi, is that if we all have the joy inside of us, that if it goes away or it's being suppressed, we're kind of allowing others to do that to us. And we have to, at some point, take the moment to say, you know what, I'm not going to allow anyone to
Hmm.
not let me have that for myself.
Hmm. I agreed. Kind of,
well,
I'm sorry, I wanted to go down this road a little bit, and maybe we can have her back. But when she's talking about joy within the context of work, it also reminds me of Marcus Buckingham and
Mm.
Love and Work,
Love and work. Yep.
right? And
yeah.
how there's, when he when that when he put those two things together at first, if he wasn't someone who, with all of his background, and he did this book in collaboration with Harvard Business Review, I think people would have kind of laughed him out of the
Mm,
room, so to speak.
Yeah.
yeah.
I think totally onto something, but I agree. If it wasn't him, I think that wouldn't have gotten the same traction.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think that the positive intelligence movement that, the concepts kind of started in the 50s, but it seems to have really taken off in the last, you know, 10 years or so. And I think that there's some something that I think a lot of leaders should be kind of paying attention to. And maybe this is where, you know, our generation, the X generation, is kind of the bridging of that from from the, because oh my gosh, we could keep going because I'm feeling like there's a backslide. I'm hearing that from a lot of leaders, and I think we need to kind of grapple onto the not the backslide of that command and control leadership to like there's evidence that doesn't work, and we need to bring that up. And people like Lori are going to help make that happen, right?
Yeah. Yeah, there's another podcast here because I'm thinking about like in these kind of the role of fear right now, right? And how that changes how we think about and how we interact with stuff. But another podcast is what I'm sensing.
Oh my gosh, right, right, right. All right, ladies,
Hmm.
hugs and
Yes.
kisses. Had a great time. Just had a great time. Have a wonderful rest of the day, and I can't wait for our next guest.
Have a joyful rest of the day.
Have a
And have
joyful
a,
rest.
right,
No.
and a joy-filled weekend.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so very much for spending some time with us. We hope you got something out of this episode. Now, if you liked it, do us a huge favor and take a moment and hit the like button. Did you do it? Thanks. Now, are you curious about who is next? Well, then please subscribe to the podcast. It'll help our channel so very much if you do choose to subscribe. Because, of course, the more subscriptions we get, the more opportunities we have to scale up our production, the types of guests we can have, and overall improve on what we can do to make the experience you want and might need. I feel like I sound like a public radio station fundraiser right now. Well, I guess that makes sense because we want you to come back again. So hit that subscribe button. It's super easy. Thanks so much, and we can't wait for you to join us for our next episode of Best Friends at Work.